Wednesday, October 15th at night here on the East Coast. Hamas has turned over 2 caskets now with more remains of allegedly slain Israeli captives, hostages. Just yesterday, well, it was still Simchat Torah here in America, but they handed over 4 caskets, 3 of whom were hostages, and 1 was actually a Palestinian that they then said was a collaborator. So Defense Minister Israel Katz says he ordered the military to ready a plan to crush the Palestinian terrorist group in the event of renewed combat. Quote, if Hamas refuses to comply with the agreement, Israel, in coordination with the United States, will resume fighting and act to achieve a total defeat of Hamas, to change the reality in Gaza and achieve all the objectives of the war. If these bodies are indeed of Israeli captives, then it would be 19 bodies still remaining in Hamas captivity. Real talk here. I'm unsure that all of the bodies will ever come back. I know this is a tough thing to say, and other people have started to talk about it a little bit, but it's something that has to be behind the scenes and is definitely being talked about. The question, if they don't actually receive all of the bodies, it very well might be that the Palestinians, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, have no idea where all of the remains are. I was told that there's about 8 bodies that are still missing, and this is extremely tough, extremely difficult. That has to be kept in the back of the mind when all of these political games are being played and being pushed out there. Hamas is, quoting from Times of Israel, Hamas's military wing claimed in the lead up to the handover that it met its obligation under the U.S.-backed ceasefire by returning all living hostages to Israel and the bodies of all the dead captives, quote, that it was able to reach. What remains of the bodies of hostages that were not returned requires great effort and special equipment to search for, and we are making great efforts to resolve this issue. So that's perhaps indicating that they're in tunnel systems. For example, Hadar Golden, Hashem Yikom Damo, has been held captive now for close to 4,100 days. I'm highly confident that Hamas knows exactly where his body is kept, because before October 7th, it was one of the means of leverage that Hamas had and was a sticking point to the Israeli government. So I'm skeptical they don't know where he is. It says nobody's getting left behind. Speaking to reporters shortly after the bodies returned to Israeli territory, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that Hamas is looking for the remaining deceased hostages held in Gaza. Quote, it's a gruesome process. They're digging and they're finding a lot of bodies. They have to separate the bodies. Some of those bodies have been in there a long time, and some of them are under rubble. They have to remove rubble. Some are in tunnels. They are way down under the earth. So I think Trump is trying to keep this coalition together. He's trying to keep everything going, even though it's extremely fragile. I have to imagine that based on this information, that the IDF, Shin Bet, and America were well aware that this is going to take place. I'm hoping and praying that these hostage families do not have to endure this anymore. I don't understand why those who wore the yellow ribbon would take it off Monday. Doesn't make sense. It's definitely not over, but it's something just to keep in mind here. I want to talk about some of the picture of the hostages that's been put out, quoting from the Times of Israel: handcuffed, caged, thrown in a pit, hostages, families described 2 years of hell. One was whipped, another was put in a cage, still another was thrown into a pit. More than one was handcuffed. In the days since they were released from 2 years in brutal captivity, freed hostages have shared through their families harrowing details of their time in Gaza. The accounts paint a picture of starvation, suffering, and physical and physiological abuse. Mixed in are moments of defiance and hope and desperate attempts to secure food or a connection to the outside world. Talking about Alon Ohel, his mother says, after living for 2 years with shrapnel in his right eye, leaving him with limited vision, and in his head, Alon will need surgery, but the medical staff believes that his eyesight can be improved significantly. Multiple hostages said they were moved from place to place, enduring varying levels of torture. Tammy Braslovsky, the mother of Ron Braslovsky, said her son was whipped and beaten with things that I cannot even mention between April and July, beatings he absorbed because he said he, quote, knew it would end. Avinatan Or, who was held alone for 2 years and tried to escape, was handcuffed and put in a cage, recounted his father, Yaron. Braslovsky also had his hands and feet cuffed at one point, his mother said. Avinatan tried to escape from captivity, and then they beat him. He was handcuffed to the bars. It was a barred place 1.5 meters, 6 feet high, and the length of it was the length of a mattress, plus a little. You can call it a cage. Yosef Chaim Elchana's father said that he spent several days in a pit underground with another 6 captives with enough room to sit or lie down with barely enough air to survive. The captors put 7 men in a pit. They cannot sit, only leaning against the wall while standing. He lacked oxygen. I thank God who made him strong. What kept him going was his family. Avi Natan Or's father said his son was in a tunnel the entire duration of his captivity. They didn't starve him, but the food was scarce. He is very thin. It's estimated that Avi Natan Or lost something like 60 pounds. So remember, when we're talking about Hamas here, and we're talking about whether or not they're actually doing everything they can to actually retrieve all of the bodies of the hostages, it is pretty fair to expect that they are not doing that. In fact, this is part of a game. Again, as I said the other day, it's worth questioning whether Turkey and Qatar are somehow involved in their delay, because perhaps they can use this as an opportunity to extract more from the United States or Israel or other allies. Going back to Ram Braslovsky, quoting here from the Times of Israel, it says the hostages also endured psychological terror. Braslovsky's mother said his captors pressured him to convert to Islam, offering him extra food in better conditions, but he resisted. They also told him falsely that Israelis were too weak or uninterested to protest on his behalf, while inflating the IDF's death toll and damage inflicted on Israel. They told him that we were broken and we didn't have the strength to get up and protest, that he apparently wasn't so important, and that he had nowhere to go back to. They told him Israel had fallen, that almost 3,000 soldiers had fallen. Hana and another hostage were also made to listen to Muslim religious messages via a radio, a situation they managed to turn to their advantage. By playing with the radio's wires, he said, they were able to tune into Israeli army radio, where Ohana heard his father being interviewed. He said to himself, my father is alive, he's waiting for me, and it gave him new life. Braslovsky also fought back. Tammy said at one point, after being given just half a pita each evening and living with his hands and feet handcuffed, he managed to set fire to a terrorist uniform in a book and used the flame to cook some pasta. The smoke attracted the attention of other people nearby, and his capture transferred him to a slightly better location. Unbelievable. Real, true heroes in our time. Again, hearing this is absolutely certain that those responsible for October 7th and for keeping the captives, keeping the hostages, absolutely need to go. And leaving Hamas in any semblance of power in Gaza will be a huge mistake. Again, they have been executing people on the streets of Gaza. They've been executing people that they accused of collaborating with Israel. It needs to end, and it needs to end immediately. I want to take a moment just to talk about the 3 hostages that were returned their bodies yesterday. Staff Sergeant Tamir Nimrodi, 18, Uriel Baruch, 35, and Eitan Levy. They were returned along with the body of a Palestinian. Tamir Nimrodi, who served as the Education Corps non-commissioned officer at the coordinator of government activities in the territories, coordination and liaison administration to the Gaza Strip, was one of the 2 hostages whose faces were unknown until the bodies were returned to Israel. He was seen alive along with his friends, Ron Sherman and Nick Beiser, in a video of his abduction from his base near the Erez crossing, but he was not confirmed dead by the IDF until his body was identified on Wednesday morning. Imagine what that's like for the families, going 2 years and not knowing if he's alive or dead. Uriel Baruch, according to the IDF's intelligence, was murdered by Hamas on October 7th near the border community of Mefalsim after fleeing the Nova Music Festival in Nir Reim, and his body was abducted to Gaza. He attended Nova with his friend Michael Yoav, who was seen shot dead in a video from the attack, but they weren't sure about Uriel Baruch. And Eitan Levy, a cab driver, was abducted after dropping a passenger off in Kibbutz Be'eri on the morning of October 7th, 2023. While driving away from the kibbutz, he ran into Hamas ambush near Mefalsim and was murdered and abducted. It took his family 40 days to understand that he had been murdered before he was then taken into captivity. So that's a little bit about those 3. God willing, there'll be more positive news, and all of the bodies that are still held by Hamas will be released immediately. Until tomorrow, that's all I have for today. Please like, subscribe, and share so we can continue to build audience.